You wake up in the morning and you just cannot help but do. You envision a world that this problem has been solved for, and that your solution is the most efficient, effective solution we can do.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome back to Inspired Leadership. My name is Tyler Bailey. I'm here with Susan Power. And today we're taking soft skills and we're showing just how they're being implemented in high schools in a game format. But first, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, recommending guests to us, being a part of the community, and helping it grow. It's all because of you. And if you do hear something today that you enjoy or something that might help somebody else, please share it or give this podcast a like. We have new episodes dropping pretty much weekly, almost 3 times a month now. Thank you so much. So for our guest, Annee Ngo is the CEO and co-founder of SoftServe, a game-based platform designed to develop and track soft skills in middle school and high school students in just 5 minutes a day. With one prior exit in 2016, Ngo is a true leader in the local tech community, having founded and sold companies such as GH Nutrition after building them from the ground up. Strong, empathetic leadership is a guiding principle for Ngo, and as the CEO of a game designed to develop many of the skills that make leaders so great, like empathy, curiosity, communication, Ngo is passionate about empowering other leaders to harness their soft skills in the workplace. Not only this, but SoftServe is actually making it easier for leaders to be successful. Without going too much into it, we'll get into the interview with Annee Ngo.
Welcome to the Inspired Leadership Podcast. Today we have Annee Ngo from SoftServe based in Vancouver. Welcome, Annee.
Thank you so much, Susan. Excited to be here with you and Tyler.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here. Maybe just start, if you don't mind, you could share with us a little bit about your story and how you got started in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I'm like every other cliche entrepreneurial story where I left law school to start my first business and realized that I was making more money than I would make in my first year of articling, and included all of the law debt. So yeah, I'd left law school to start my first business because I'd been so fascinated with the world of sports and health nutrition. I moved back to Vancouver with my partner at the time. We built our first business together. It was this mom and pop shop that was somewhere in between GNC and Popeyes. If anybody takes supplements, they're sort of familiar with those brands. Like, he would go into Popeyes and feel like really, really empowered because the person in front of him looked just like him. He was this like 220-pound, like, bodybuilder who knew everything about creatine and arginine and all of these proteins. And then I'd go into GNC and I'd see a lady who was maybe in her 40s, who was just talking to me about hair and nails and all of this skincare that just lived on 2 different sides of the sports nutrition world. And I felt like there was somewhere in the middle that we didn't have access to, where, for aspiring nutritional, aspiring health, those who were interested in health at the time just didn't know really where to go to. Like, you either had to be this bodybuilder, or you had to be somebody who was only interested in natural and more natural products or other and that was when we decided okay, that there's an opportunity here. Started our first business, and then lo and behold, over the course of the next 3 years, we would grow into 12 locations. We started to distribute retail, even developed the brand into our franchise that we sold. Wow. And the rest is sort of history. I fell in love with entrepreneurship from that experience, and knew that that's sort of the thing that I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was to at least be a part of entrepreneurship, whether that was being an entrepreneur myself or teaching.
Through this podcast and through people I've met as well, what I've noticed is that inspired leaders like yourself are able to they're able to critically think about the world around them, identify an opportunity, create a solution for that opportunity, and then very clearly articulate their way of solving that problem that helps other people. And that's, I can see that's what you've done, and you've been able to do it multiple times over. And almost it's like a natural way. It comes almost naturally to you. My question for you is, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned so far through the various businesses that you've built and sold? What's one of the greatest lessons you've learned?
Yeah, I think the greatest lesson, and you'll sort of see it through my journey in and out of so many different industries and so many different categories of business, is to really spend the time in asking yourself important, critical questions like, what problem in the world am I solving? And at first, anyways, entrepreneurship was just this fun, cool career path where I got to see all of the ideas I had come to life. You know, when you work for corporate Canada, which I did for, I don't know, also like the 10 years before I was in entrepreneurship, I worked for Rogers, I worked for Aritzia, I worked for CI Financial, and really everything from finance to telecommunications, retail, fashion. And I always found that like there was so much red tape. Anytime you had an idea or a solution for a problem that you felt on the front line, you'd always be waiting months, sometimes even years before you got to see those ideas come to life. And a really great example of that is when I was working for TD Bank years ago. You know, I think I was 18 when I first got that job. I remember seeing the same people over and over line up for really simple transactions like, you know, deposits and withdrawals. And, you know, at the time I was 18, I was like ready to go home, didn't want to stay longer than the whenever the bank was closing. So I like think of hacky ways to get them out of the line faster. And I just realized like the easiest way to do that is showing them how to use the ATM machine. And so I would take this, you know, 55-year-old, 65-year-old, I don't know, like just somebody who didn't seem like they were super tech savvy at the time or familiar with the ATM machine, and I'd walk her out of the line to the ATM machine at the entrance and show her how to do it herself, really empowering her with the skills to solve these problems for herself, and by that way solving the problem of like being able to go home early. And it was funny because my manager at the time was so upset at me for doing that. I think because all that they could see in front of them was that, you know, the amount of time that it would take me to teach this person was going to be much longer than the immediate outcome of me just doing the transaction itself. Fast forward 10 years later, I walk into a TD Bank and they have what we call a learning facility. So where they do exactly that. There is no transaction that gets done without somebody teaching you how to do it yourself, either online or at the ATM machine. And I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, if you just did this 10 years ago, how far along would you be today?
Wow.
But
that's a great example. Like entrepreneurs are problem solvers, right? So you just naturally saw a problem and solved it. And now 10 years later, they've adopted that. Tell us a bit about SoftServe, Annee, and what gave you the idea for starting SoftServe and the type of problems that you solve with that business, your current business.
Yeah. So one of the things I love the most about my first business, Good Health Nutrition, was that I got to teach my clients or my customers about nutrition, health, fitness, and all of that. And I think that was what I really loved. It wasn't the exercise or the practice of entrepreneurship, but it was the teaching, sharing all of the lessons. And then that sort of snowballed into this understanding that there's more to this than just about the exercise of entrepreneurship. So I guess like an easier way to describe this would be like the reason why we ended up selling our business was not because of this huge economic opportunity. It was actually because Amazon and bodybuilding.com was really becoming a serious contender in the space. And we were effectively retailing commodity items, you know, like protein, vitamins, and the like. And as a result, understanding that our opportunity was shrinking. And so I moved to San Francisco for a few months to understand how I could also introduce technology into our business, and instead met with a community of aspiring founders who didn't have a tech or an engineering or software development background, who also wanted to, build really amazing solutions. And that's when we came back to Vancouver, sold the business, took that money, which I thought made me rich forever. I think it was like, I was 22, I had like $45,000 in my bank account from my first business I ever sold. I was like, I'm rich. And in San Francisco, where they're talking about billion-dollar valuations, my head was just spinning. And I realized then and there that like the thing I wanted to do was to teach and empower more students about the type of learning that I got to experience by being an entrepreneur. And so this all leads back to SoftServe, because the second company we built was called ProtoHack. We did these one-day idea-thons where we'd bring together venture capitalists, angel investors, designers, developers, all together to listen to pitches from non-technical founders from all over the world. We were in Chandigarh, India, Istanbul, Turkey, Milan, Italy, anywhere and everywhere you name it, we had a chapter there that was exploring entrepreneurship in this way. And it wasn't until we were conducting these events for TED, for Stanford, sort of like, the top, I guess like the top programs in the world, where we're meeting with like C-level executives who, when asked the question, like, what problem are you solving in the world with your idea, with what you're pitching to us today, like what's the problem here? Because there's so many cool, fun, interesting ideas, right? But in hearing that even they had the challenge of not being able to articulate like what that problem is really like so fascinating that we had to sort of look into what we were building at the time and realize like, oh, okay, so it has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. It really has everything to do with soft skills. These human soft skills that never really get to exist outside of, your fourth year in life, because as soon as you enter the education system, those questions like why get eliminated from your vocabulary. It's not neat, it's not organized, it's not simple enough to be able to to explore further, in a classroom of 30 students where the teacher's just feeling overwhelmed and overworked.
Yeah. Wow. We definitely need, there's a big need for soft skills. And I know for myself, for teaching many years, I just found that it was kind of like almost like books, a little figuratively beaten out of children. It's just the creativity and the way that they can just express themselves and problem solve in the real world. But it leads me into another question. And the question is, what does inspired leadership mean to you? And have you ever worked with an inspired leader that maybe has taught you to be who you are today?
I love that this is the theme of your podcast. I'm going to answer it with an example, actually, and sort of answer the second question first. I've been lucky enough over the course of my entrepreneurial journey to meet with and become close friends with some of the most inspired leaders I've ever met. And they are truly the definition of inspired leadership in my eyes. So we have a small community of female founder friends. We call them the FFF on WhatsApp. There's I think 15 of us, and growing. And each one of them, when I think about how they've decided to build their business, is an immediate reflection of their identities and their character. I think the best example might be Leslie and Untamed. So one of my best friends and my bridesmaids, her name is Cheryl. She built a brand called Untamed Artistry. And if you just look at the brand, it is her in brand form. The whole idea of Untamed Artistry is being your quirky, fun, honest, unique, authentic self and feeling beautiful, feeling empowered to express yourself creatively. And that's her. When I think about Cheryl, that is her. She's Untamed Artistry. And then we also have a little funnier story is my friend Karen, who is the founder of Laissez de Label. So laissez is like a fancy way of saying lazy, and she builds like at-home workwear for women that feels and looks like pajama, or that feels like pajamas but look like workwear. And it's just so her. It's about being comfortable in your own skin, feeling accepted and beautiful wherever you are, and just in comfort. And I think like inspired leadership is when your why is so obvious, it's so clear to the rest of the world. I think for us, like it's really always been about human skills, human soft skills, right? And so when we think about building out like our company core values, it's like an easy conversation because we just practice what we preach. If we're building something with the intention of encouraging and empowering and really like exploring empathy and curiosity, then those are the values that we are going to live and breathe by, not just in everyday life, but in our work. So I think inspired leadership is when your why is just so obvious, so visible to the rest of your community.
I think we've yet to hear that, but that makes so much sense with inspired leaders. They just live and breathe their message, and they can't help but exude it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You just cannot help it because that's who you are. I think it's just so authentically a part of like, I mean, I don't know how to say this like well or like pretty in a nice packaged way, but really I think inspired leadership resonates so much with me because it's something that you just cannot avoid. Like you wake up in the morning and you wish that you weren't thinking about this. You really didn't. It's like nobody chooses entrepreneurship because it's fun and easy and simple and like the fastest way to get rich. It's like the opposite of all of that. And so it's something that, you know, you wake up in the morning and you just cannot help but do. You envision a world that this problem has been solved for, and that your solution is just so happens to be the most efficient, effective solution we can do.
When we think about kids developing soft skills, and I think they should change it to hard skills because a lot of people struggle with this regardless of their age. Is it possible for kids to develop hard skills, soft skills without engaging in person? When we think about the pandemic and the remote learning that's happened over the past year, A, is it possible to learn that when you're not three-dimensional in person? And B, what can parents do to help support their children in developing soft skills?
Yeah. Okay. So to start, I think it's so important to acknowledge that you hit the nail on the head. I think soft skills is such a misnomer for what we're describing here. And I think that a better alternative to that is calling them human skills. Now, these are the skills that make us uniquely, distinctly human and have allowed us to innovate out of really every problem that we've encountered as a civilization, you know, from the get-go. And yeah, to answer your question about like the ability for students to, or children in that case, to be able to learn online. Yeah, I think we've seen it time and time again. I think for the first time ever, what gets me so excited about what we've built is we've sort of reclaimed technology to do the thing that it's always supposed to have done for us, and that's really empower our human skills. The place where students are, where children are, is online, is, you know, utilizing technology. And I think we've finally found a way to take that, harness that, and allow them to be more curious, more creative, more empathetic, utilizing the tools that are in front of them and meeting them where they're at. You know, I think it's easy to assume that. I think it's a sort of a hard jump because we assume that these soft skills like communication, creativity, empathy, and curiosity have to happen in person. The COVID's taught us that that's probably the opposite of what could happen. We've had more students on the platform than we've ever had before. We've had more schools utilizing the platform more than ever before, and the outcomes have been just as effective, I think, in person as they have been online.
Awesome. Annee, can you recap what we talked about before we started hitting record? Like, how does the platform work for kids to learn soft skills? Is it a training video thing, or and what you were saying about quantifying the results, if you don't mind just recapping?
Yeah, absolutely. And so our big vision has always been about being the first ever soft skills index, first ever quantified soft skills index. One of the greatest challenges in soft skill learning is not having enough data. Yeah, we just don't know enough about how soft skills are being understood, identified, expressed. So what we've built today is a game-based learning platform for educators in high school and in college, so really secondary and post-secondary, where educators have this free-to-use tool to introduce concepts like empathy and curiosity into every classroom. And so as I was sharing with Tyler, there isn't a curriculum that comes with the platform. It's a framework where educators can introduce concepts like empathy and curiosity into content like mathematics and computer science, everything from history to really language arts. If you can think, if I want to zoom out on the product itself, it's a framework where educators can take content from subject matter like American history or Canadian history. And so we're taking subject matter and allowing students to then explore questions like who cares about this subject matter and why might they care, with layers of voting and gamification that make it possible for us to identify not the right answer, but a best answer, which in the real world really honors the subjectivity and the contextualness of soft skill development. And so a student is asked to express empathy about this subject matter through answering questions like who cares about this and why. There's multiple levels of voting, and from that we sort of identify how students are thinking about these specific subject matter, but also through the lens of curiosity and empathy.
I love that. I love that you've taken this aspect and you built it into a game. I remember a TED talk. I believe Jane McGonigal talked about how games are really going to be the new world. They're going to build the future of people. They're the best thing for us. And she was talking about how the biggest problem was that people were learning all these incredible skills of teamworking, of getting excitement, building hope, being the survivalist. They're building all these incredible skills, but they're learning it in a paradigm that's about a fake reality. And it's so, and they were finding that there was a massive disconnect about somebody learning these skills and then applying these skills to reality. So what you've done is you've taken what she calls world-changing games, Jane McGonigal, and you've taken this aspect and you've made a game that is a world-changing game for people, which you're changing people's lives and you're making them better in the real world. You're not kind of virtual world. If we want to call a Zoom call a virtual world, but we know this is real. But yeah, it's absolutely an incredible thing that you've done. I would love to ask, where do you find, where are the biggest gaps for the majority of kids? Where do you find that they need to really focus on the most with their soft skills?
The pedagogy that really that our work is centered around and sort of developed from is out of Stanford. So there's a school called the Design School, and they focus on sort of a school of thought of, it's called design thinking. And it really is about deconstructing the process of innovation into its individual parts. And that first step in the design thinking process is empathy. Okay, so being able to take the perspective of another group, another user, another customer, to be able to solve really big world problems. And I think the greatest challenge for a lot of students and educators alike is living in comfort with discomfort. Okay, so we have been taught as soon as we enter the education system that there's a right answer to everything. It's black or white, right or wrong, A not B, B not C, and the like. And finally introducing an idea to the students that maybe there isn't a right answer, there is just a better answer. There are lots of possible answers, and that's the whole idea behind, that's the whole belief system behind, soft skills like, I'm so sorry. I have someone trying to buzz up. I'm so sorry.
That's no problem. We can.
Yeah,
edit
don't
it out.
worry about
Don't
it.
you worry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
We
so back to the question. The greatest challenge I think for educators and students alike is being comfortable with open-ended questions. Now, the focus in education has always been about outcomes and results, solutions, and answers. And for the first time ever in developing these human soft skills, we're allowing students to maybe be wrong, to maybe have a discussion about what could be a better solution or a better answer. We're discussing things like social justice issues, and we're exploring the environment and allowing them to take the perspective of not just their own, but of others.
Where can our listeners go to learn more about SoftServe or even what you're doing?
GetSoftServe.com is where we have an open waitlist now for all educators, where we just opened the waitlist again after closing it last month. So this September, we hope to serve 1 million educators, and their students, and offer SoftServe for free for educators for always.
Wow. Building an index of soft skills. I love it.
And is it available on the market for corporate right now, or is that down the road?
Yeah, that's going to be down the road. We hope in 2022 that'll be available to some of our first corporate partners who are supporting us in developing SoftServe for educators today.
And that wraps another episode of the Inspired Leadership Podcast. My name is Susan Power of Power Up Leadership. Thank you on behalf of myself and my co-host Tyler Bailey, virtual presenter and coach. We love hearing from you, our listeners. If you like this podcast, give it a like, share it with a friend. Let us know what topics you want to hear about. Until next time, stay inspired.